Good morning. Let's stand together as we sing. So glad you're here this morning. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. And we shout out your praise. We sing to a God who heals. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. Yes, He hung up on that cross, then He rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. And we shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. 'Cause we were the beggars, and now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. And we were the beggars, but now we're royalty. And we were the prisoners, and now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. And we shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. And we shout out your praise. Won't be quiet. And we shout out your praise. There's joy in this house. There's joy in this house today. We won't be quiet. Well, I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. 'Cause man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. And then you came along and you put me back together. And now every desire is now satisfied. I'm here in your love. Oh, Oh, there's nothing that's better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Now I'm not afraid to show you my weakness and my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all. Still you call me afraid. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. And there's not a place for your mercy and grace it won't find me again. 'Cause there's nothing that's better than you. No, there's nothing that's better than you. No, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you, Lord. There's nothing that's better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. Turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the together. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you, Lord. There's nothing that's better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Sing that again. Oh, there's nothing that's better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. And you turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can.
pray. Wow, Lord, you are the coolest. I don't know how. I just can't imagine not being in a personal relationship with you. Thank you that you offer that to us. Thank you that you interact with us. Thank you for never letting us down. We let you down a whole bunch. You're so faithful. Thank you for being here with us today. Move among us, encourage us, and continue to speak to us today. In the name of Jesus, amen. I was looking at the announcements that Janessa gave me. Apparently, Kevin got a haircut, and they call it a mullet. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, at midnight the other night, I had my hammer right there by my glass piggy bank. If it was going to go to the perm curl thing, I'm breaking the bank because we got to save our friend Kevin, because that would have been horrible. There was some votes for that. People wanted to see it permed and curled. I guess I like Kevin a little more than the rest of you. I don't know what the deal is there. Yeah, here's the total. Almost $5,000 over a haircut. That's radical. That's phenomenal. Thank you for contributing. That's going for student ministries. I think VBS, Vacation Bible School, coming up. I want to go to the Vacation Bible School. That's going to be awesome. So thank you again. Next Sunday, June 13th, starts off the student summer kickoff for student ministries. Job fair is next Saturday. If you'd like to be involved with that, please email Janessa. One more thing. I discovered this on the back of one of the chairs. It's a code. And it's a code to connect. Like, have you ever been lonely and like, man, I wish I had somebody to talk to? They come up with a code. You can scan this code and you can connect with somebody to talk to. Have you ever like, man, I wish somebody would pray for me? They got a code for it. I wish somebody'd pray. Scan the code. Somebody will pray for you. It's silly how easy that is. And it's not even magic. This is actually technology. And if you're online, we have the Connect cards online. Fill out the Connect cards. People actually read those and actually pray over those for you. So thank you. And we probably have a video coming up next.
Well, good morning. Morning. Glad you're here this morning. And yeah, man, guys, I've had a week. And so glad you're here to celebrate this moment with me. I hope that this never happens again. But yeah, I got this. Thank you, love. That's the first time my wife has looked at me all week, which is really cool. That's kind of not a joke. Yeah. All week, everybody's been asking me about like what this has been like. And so I just want to give you a little bit of insight, a couple stories of what happened. I walked into this Great Clips right over here in Mitchell Ranch Plus. I don't really go there, never got my hair cut there before, but I thought if anybody knows how to cut a mullet, it's probably a Great Clips, right? just seemed like the place. And so I walk in, and I walk up to the front desk, and I stood there for a second. I had checked in online because I'm super tech savvy. And I talked to the lady. I said, I checked in online. They said, oh, okay, well, somebody will be with you right in just a moment. And I said, well, I need somebody here who can cut my hair into a mullet. And no joke, out of nowhere, like a woman comes from the back, parting the seas. And she is the manager, and she's like, out of the way, I got this. And so Cheryl, as I found out her name was, Cheryl took me to her chair. And Cheryl was like, you want a mullet? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, do you want one of those new, cool, super, like, fashionable ones? And I was like, is there such a thing? Because that's news to me. And she's like, yeah, kids are getting them now. You know, they're getting these mullets, which, guys, if you have a child, raise them right. There are some things we just have to let die. Just let it go. It doesn't have to stay with us anymore. Do the Elsa and just let it go. We don't have to hold on to these. But anyways, she sits me down. She's like, do you want one of those like fashionable ones? Now those are a little shorter in the back, and they'll curl up a little bit, and it'll kind of look a little bit more normal, just kind of like short on the sides all the way down. I was like, no, ma'am. I can't have a fashionable one. I need one that Billy Ray Cyrus would have had when he sang Achy Breaky Heart. And she was like, that's perfect. And I said, do you need a picture? And she goes, no. I know the song. I know the man. I will do the haircut. She was a pro. She starts cutting my hair. She did wash it. Just so you know, I've been growing my hair for since last February. So it'd been a minute. It was pretty long. I don't know if you noticed it or not. It was pretty long. By the way, my mom noticed every single week. She would watch our services online from Texas and be like, hey, Kevin, your hair's getting out of control. And so you know, just a side note, my mother voted for me to get a mullet of all the things. Yes, she went in hard financially to get me a mullet, which I thought was fascinating. I never thought I'd say those words in my life. My mom voted for me to get a mullet because she thought it would go back to normal fastest. She thought that it would be normal in the front, and then you just got to cut off the back, and it goes back to normal, which I'm hoping is true. We'll find out. And so the lady says, she looks at me, she's like, man, your hair, like, she was like, how long have you been growing this? I said, it's been since last February. She's like, wow. She goes, well, I'm going to go wash it. And so we washed it. And then she was like, you know, I'm going to wash it again. And I was like, okay, do I have to pay more for that? She's like, no, I'll just do it this time for free. So she washed it again. And then after the second time, she did wash it a third time, just for posterity, I'm sure, and to get whatever was living in it out of it. And so she washed my hair a third time, takes me back to the chair, and very simply sits me down on the chair, and she's like, I got this. And she just starts cutting the sides straight back until it looked like a semi-normal haircut in the front, but then the back was left long and magical. And so I left the hair cutting place, and she was so happy. She couldn't be here. She actually wanted to show up this morning because she was like, I want to see a person preach with a mullet. And I thought, no, you don't. No, nobody wants to see that. And so she had to work this morning, but she was very excited about it. So I go home, and Marie is like, what does it look like? She's texting me, what does it look like? And I was like, I can't prepare you for this. I can't do it. Because here's one of the things that you find is as you look at me straight on, it's really not that bad. It's just the second that it turns sideways that you're like, oh no, oh my, what happened there? And so I got home and I walked in the door and I had a hat on, and I took the hat off, and Marie looked at me and she took out her phone, she took a picture, and then she said, now you will have to wear a hat the rest of the time that you're home. I thought she was joking until it was almost bedtime that night, and I took my hat off, and she was like, do you have a hat you could sleep in? Like, I don't think they make hats. You could do a nightcap? I don't think they make those anymore. And then that night, she told me the next morning, she said, I woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I was getting back into bed. She said, I looked at you, and I thought, oh, it's so nice to see him with shorter hair again and kind of be able to see his face more. And she was like, that's so nice. And then she said, and then you turned. And then I was like, oh, no. I'm no longer attracted to this man. We better have raised some money because it might have destroyed our marriage. And so the whole week I would go places, and different places would have different reactions. I walked into another office that I work at with a nonprofit I work at, and they were so excited. They were taking pictures, and they could not wait. And then we would have meetings, and I would sit down in meetings with people. And as I would talk to them, things would be fine, again, until I would turn to the side, and suddenly it'd be like, oh, no. And then they could not take me seriously the rest of the meeting. And so I had to wear a hat so people could take me seriously. And then that night I went to go see the Tampa Bay Lightning play. And just so you know, when you walk into a hockey game, you're not the only one with a mullet.
fact, they give you better seats when you walk with a mullet. I'm like, well, let's take you down to the front. You obviously know your way around here. And so it was pretty cool. I would take off my hat every once in a while, and people would notice. I noticed that. But last night was the pinnacle, because last night I had to go get a cable for something. And I thought, you know what? Normally I would go to Target for this, but tonight I'm going to be with my people. And I went to Walmart in Pasco County. And I walked in there like a king. No hat. The hair's flowing, right? It's feathered on the top. It's lethal, but in the back, it's got this party going on. What some people call neck curtains. Yeah, it's gross, right? And I walked in there and I shook it around. I mean, I was so proud. People were like staring in awe. They followed me with a spotlight, threw confetti as I walked through the aisles. It's funny how everywhere I went, like there was like a story to it. There was something going on in each place. As I walked in Walmart, literally the greeter did give me a little, like she was proud of me. As I walked out, she said goodbye, and I think she missed the mullet as I walked out. But it's one of those things where like everywhere I went, people wanted to know the story of the mullet. Like they were like, so what happened here? How did this come about? And I would have to tell them, so my church, we raised money, and we were raising money for students, and so we raised this money for this mullet. And they'd be like, oh, that's awesome. And they were like, I'm so sorry. And I'd be like, I know, I thought people liked me too. And so I had to do that every single place I went. And then after I would go somewhere, people would want to know the story of what it was like to go somewhere with a mullet like this. Like, did people stare at you? Did they pay attention to you? Did they notice? And I'd have to tell them the stories about that. And what's interesting is I found myself being infinitely more interesting with a mullet. People want to know every move you make when you have hair like this. They want to know all of it. And why they find you so interesting is because people love to hear stories. That's just a fact. People love to hear stories. If you're ever at a party, I challenge you. If you're ever at a party or you're hanging out with people, and we can do that again now, I don't know if you've noticed, like you're allowed to get together with humans again. That's really cool. If you're ever at one, notice who people gather around. It's always, always, always the storytellers. Storytellers have this ability to bring people in, and as they tell stories about their day, their week, their month, their year, their friends, if you will, as they do that, as they tell stories, people gather around them. It's amazing how this works. Our minds are literally wired for story. Again, what we see is that our minds are kind of three different parts working together. It's not just right brain, left brain, but there's this amygdala in the middle of that. The amygdala is the emotional part of your brain. And literally, as you tell a story, you can take the logical side of your brain, you can take the artistic side of your brain, and this emotional side of your brain. You can put them all together. And it's one of the few times that we have our brain working completely in tandem with one another. And all firing on all cylinders, that brain can understand something. And so Jesus and many rabbis have taught from stories for years and years. In fact, if you go back, just a fun fact, if you ever read Romeo and Juliet, anybody ever read this book or seen the movie or heard of this? Probably we're all familiar with this thing called Romeo and Juliet. It's a new hit. I think you'll love it. It's coming out this summer. And it's this book that we've all probably read, but if you ever pay attention to the book, there's something much deeper going in this story of Romeo and Juliet. It wasn't just Shakespeare writing a quick play that he would write about a young couple who fell in love. That's not what the story was actually about. If you ever go back and read the history of the story goes much deeper. In fact, at this time, this is around the Reformation time in England when the church was splitting. And so there's two sides of the church. One side is saying, well, you can love anybody and you can fall in love with God in a way that doesn't need all these rote and rituals and all these routines. You don't have to have all these things in place. It's like this beautiful picture of how you fall in love with God. That's what the Reformation was about. Was saying you didn't need all the routines, all the rituals, all the different services and giving money to this thing or doing that thing this way. You didn't need all that to fall in love with God. You could just fall in love with God. But there was another side of the church that was saying, no, you need all those things. You need ritual. You need routine. And we still see this in the church today. There's kind of two sides of the church, right? Maybe you would call it Protestant Catholic. Maybe you would call it Protestant in certain forms of Protestantism. We see that still happening. You need all this rote, routine, ritual to find God. If you don't do all the things in the right order, you won't find God. You won't get into heaven. We kind of believe that still. And when Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, he saw this split happening in the church. And he wrote Romeo and Juliet actually about that. If you read the book, if you read the story in understanding that, what you'll find is that at the beginning of the story, Romeo tries to fall in love with another woman. And he actually tries to fall in love with a woman named Rosaline. He wants to fall in love with her first. And his friend Mercutio says, well, Romeo, let me tell you how to fall in love. Let me tell you what it's like. And he says, first you do this. And he gives him step-by-step instructions. Almost like a rote or a routine or a ritual that you would need to go through to fall in love with somebody. And Romeo tries that. He actually tries that in the book. If you remember this, he tries to fall in love with her. And it doesn't work. He goes through all the steps, and it didn't happen. But then on the other side, he falls in love with this woman named Juliet. And if you remember how he falls in love with her, it's very interesting. Again, if you read it to understand it in this context, the entire book and the entire story is written in iambic pentameter. I'm sorry if this takes you back to high school English, but it's all written in iambic pentameter where it's very structured, very put together lines. Everything is rote, everything is routine, everything is ritual. All the lines are written that way for Romeo until he meets Juliet. And when he meets Juliet, he breaks out of his iambic pentameter, out of his rote, his ritual routine, and he starts speaking in free form. He starts telling her how he loves her. And that whole speech that he gives to her is in free form for the first time, saying maybe you don't need all those things to fall in love with somebody. Maybe this kingdom of heaven, maybe this thing that Jesus is about is much bigger and broader than all of these rote, routine, ritual things. And actually, at the end of the book, if you pay attention, there's things like, for instance, one of them dies for 3 days and comes back to life. I don't know if you've ever heard that anywhere else. Any other stories that happens where somebody dies for 3 days and comes back to life? That happens in Romeo and Juliet. Again, there's a lot of symbolism in this book. What we remember, though, from this story is there have been many, many books written on the Reformation of the church in the 14th century. There's many books written on this. You could find tons of books written on the Reformation of the church. But we don't remember all those rote and routine and ritual things. What we remember is the story that lives on. We remember Romeo and Juliet, don't we? It sticks with us. It stays with us. It's when our mind works together. And so Jesus and many rabbis would teach in stories. In fact, as we saw in that video, you're going to see all these weird images that are used. That's what that whole video is about, is weird imagery that Jesus uses. But then it says, he spoke many things to them, and he spoke in parables. He talked in stories. There's not a lot of this rote routine stuff that Jesus does. He doesn't give us a lot of bullet points about the kingdom of heaven, what it's like. What he does, he tells us stories about the kingdom of heaven's like. And then he says, the good news about that is you get to interpret that. You get to feel that story. You get to understand that story. And today we're going to be in Matthew 13. And you don't even, I'm just going to tell you, usually I tell you, turn in your Bible, go there, whatever. You're welcome to do that. But just a warning, today is one of Jesus's shortest parable. In fact, it is the shortest parable Jesus ever tells. And if you want it, it's literally just one slide right here. So you don't have to go there. I mean, you can still, to make sure you fact check me and make sure I'm not lying about what he said, but it's really pretty short. It's just one sentence. That's all we really get in this parable. And I think this thing is kind of like these other stories where it has so much depth. And even though it's so short, there's so much going on here. There's so much for us to take home. And I'm just going to warn you, I'm going to try to do a cursory overview of this thing, but it will not be enough. It will not be enough. There's so much more. You could plumb the depths of this story. Now, Jesus is teaching in a boat, and there's people all over a hillside around him. This is actually very rare for a rabbi. Rabbis would normally teach only to their disciples. They did not stand out and usually teach to everybody, because part of it was well, that's giving away my job for free. My job is to train just these people, not to train everybody. Jesus never works like that, right? Jesus sees, first of all, as we've looked at other parables, Jesus wants the kingdom of heaven to be for everyone, so he teaches it for everyone. He starts teaching from a boat. Remember that means that he's not just trying to be cool and be I'm on a boat. He's not trying to do that. He's just saying this is where you can hear me best, is out here on the water. The sound waves carry best, and you'll be able to hear me better that way. And there's people all over that are listening to these stories, and Jesus is just rolling through parables one after another in Matthew 13. The whole chapter is just parables. Now, what's interesting about him teaching to a crowd is we have to assume, what is that crowd thinking? And my guess is, if I were to try to say what this crowd is going through, what they're experiencing, is I'm guessing there's 3 different people or types of people in this crowd. Already, there's probably a group of people. We're in Matthew 13. We're a little bit further in the book. There's probably already a group of people who are I'm all in. Whatever Jesus is teaching, I'm already there. I'm with you. I'm all in. That's great. They're there. And what he's going to say is going to just encourage them further to continue to be all in. There's probably another group who is completely against. We know that from the time Jesus starts teaching, there are people who are absolutely dead set against everything he teaches. In fact, some of those people will come back around later and they will kill him. I mean, it's adamantly against him. They do not like what he's teaching from the start. We know there's a group that's against. And everything he says here in this parable is going to push them further away. And then there's this third section. I would say most of the crowd is probably in this third section. And if we're being honest with ourselves, most of us are in this third section. And that's the section that would say we're on the fence. We're not necessarily with, all in, 100%. We're not against necessarily, but we're kind of on the fence. We haven't really decided which side we're on yet, or we haven't fully committed to anything. And Jesus is going to talk to those people because what he wants to do is he wants to make them decide something. They need to make a decision of which side of this kingdom of heaven thing they're on. And so he teaches this parable, he's teaching about the kingdom of heaven. Now, remember, the kingdom of heaven is this beautiful picture that he paints of this incredibly grace-filled, just beautiful place of love. There's wisdom involved in it. There's this acceptance within it. It's this place that comes with like no judgment towards the world, but it actually comes with love for the world. It's a fascinating kingdom that he talks about. And he's presenting this kingdom of heaven to them, saying, this is what I want. And what's interesting to me is that he's not so worried about us going to heaven. He's more concerned in these stories about heaven coming to us. He's not so concerned about us going there, but about their coming here. He doesn't want us to get into heaven. He actually wants heaven to get into us. And he's not just talking about someday somewhere else. He's actually talking about right here and right now. This is it. And so he's teaching these parables not in the future tense, but he's teaching them right now. This is what it looks like. And so, I'll read it from my Bible again. You can if you'd like to, but if you want to, fact check me or whatever. But it says this: the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then went, and in his joy, he went and sold all he had and bought that field. That's the whole story. That's the whole story. Now, we might get out of here a little bit early. I don't know, because it's not a long story. But I just want to take apart a couple things that I noticed about this, because I think Jesus is pointing to two different things. First is that this kingdom is for everyone. But second, this kingdom will cost everything. This kingdom is for everyone. See, what would happen, he's not just making this up. This isn't just like a hypothetical situation. When he says the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, that actually would happen. That's not uncommon. So what would happen in war-torn countries like Israel was at that time and still is today? As he talks to people, what would happen is he would say this space, when somebody would come in, let's say like we had a fight going on around here, like we had the fighting Odessians versus the fighting Trinitarians, or whatever we're called. I don't know what the cities are named or what our mascots are. But if we had those two fights, and it wouldn't be a great fight, to be honest, because we're all pretty, we're not tough. Neither city's real tough, to be honest. But if you had the fighting Odessans, and they're on horseback probably, because that's kind of their whole thing, come in and fight the fighting Trinitarians, like you would have this fight. And what would happen is as they came in, you would have to hide your things because they want to steal your stuff. And so what would happen a lot of times is as Israel would be literally taken over by Rome or other countries, but especially Rome, this empire came into them. What they would do is they would take their treasures, the things that they valued the most, and they would dig down into the dirt and they would put it in a field. They would try to remember where it was so that later they could come back and reclaim it. This was very, very common. Today, I don't know what we would do with that. Like, I don't know, like with NFTs and stuff, I don't know how you do that. Like if you were like, my Bitcoin, I'm going to bury my Bitcoin. Like it'd kind of be a joke, right? Like I don't know how that would work. Somebody would be like, is there treasure in this field? You'd be like, oh, you bet there is. Where is it? Oh, I don't know. It's on the internet somewhere. It'd be very confusing. For me, it would be lumber. We bought these 4x4s to build my kids like this new tree house, these 12-foot long 4x4s to build my kids this new playhouse in our backyard. We have not finished that project because suddenly everything got very, very expensive. I don't know if you've noticed, but like lumber and stuff is very expensive. And so now those 4x4s have just turned into my kids' college fund. Someday we're just going to sell those, send them to school. But there's this treasure, this thing you're walking along and it's there. And what we see is that's what they would do. They would literally bury something down there. Now, what's interesting to me as you think about that is it means that something was there before. This is an ancient truth. This is an ancient thing. It was already there. I remember my grandfather and I, he lived on a creek. He was from Ohio. And so you didn't call it a creek, it was a crick. And he had a crick, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, all y'all know what I'm talking about. All y'all from West Virginia and stuff. We had a crick. And so there's a creek out front, and he lived next to a golf course. And golfers that weren't good would lose their golf balls in this creek. And so we would go walk the creek together, and he would take tongs with him, and he would pull up every golf ball he could find. He would dig through the dirt, find the golf balls, and then he'd put them in egg cartons, and he'd sell them back to the golfers, which I thought was genius. And so we used to do that every summer. Like when I would go visit him, that was part of what we did. We'd go down the creek, we'd find golf balls, put them in there. And they were already there. They would not have worked had the golf balls not been there. What's interesting to me is as we look at the kingdom of heaven, what's beautiful about it is it's something that's already there. I believe it was something that was fundamental to creation. Remember we talked about this last week, but when God creates, at the beginning of the Bible, what's the very first thing he creates? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Notice what it does not say. It does not say that God created hell. That was just not in the original design. It says that God created the heavens and the earth. He wanted this heaven place where he was fully involved with us, where there was this love and peace and joy that came from him that was constantly just here in the world. And there's brokenness now, and it's not there the way it was, but it was already there. See, I believe that the world was created good at the beginning. Remember when God creates every single thing in the book of Genesis, everything he creates, trees and plants and grass and oceans and mosquitoes or whatever. And he says everything he creates, he says it's good. I don't know why mosquitoes are good. I haven't figured it out yet, but he says it's good, it's good, it's good. He created this world good. And the whole point of the kingdom of heaven is that he already created good, and it's already been there that way. But our job in the kingdom of heaven now is our job is to reclaim. For some, you might say to restore. Might be a name for a church or something, like a restoration time. I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm just spitballing here. But to restore what was already good. It's already there. The treasure was already buried there. It wasn't that he brought it there and put it there. He found it there. And he brings it to this field. But the other thing that I love about this part of the story, when we think about this is for everyone, is that, I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I would think that this broken field, this place that represents a war-torn and a beaten-up area, that would be the last place the kingdom of heaven would show up. But it turns out that's the first place the kingdom of heaven shows up. If we're being honest with ourselves, there's a part of us that thinks that we are closest to the kingdom of heaven when everything's going right. When we're doing everything right. Like if you took apart your week, just like real quickly, if you were like, this last week, I did all these things wrong, and everything went poorly in my life. Like everything fell apart. I didn't do the things I was supposed to do. I didn't talk to people the way I was supposed to talk to them. I didn't act the way I was supposed to act. You might be like, man, and that's when I'm furthest from the kingdom of heaven. But like the weeks that if you're being honest with yourself, you're like, but the weeks that I like didn't cuss as much, and I like did my job better, and showed up to things on time, or whatever your weakness is, which that's mine, is showing up to things on time. Whatever your thing is, you're like, the weeks I did that, I remember to set out the recycling or whatever it is. You're like, I'm closer to the kingdom of heaven because of my actions. I did it. I'm closer to the kingdom of heaven. Right? I think sometimes we think this, especially financially in our world. I'm just going to put this out there. If you ever read the book, there's a great book called Blessed. It's a study on the prosperity gospel in America and what it's done to us. If you're not familiar with the prosperity gospel, it's kind of that gospel that if Jesus is with you, then you're going to have health and wealth and happiness every single day. It's kind of our televangelist version of faith, and it really has done some damage to my opinion of our faith. I don't know if you know this or not. Jesus didn't have any dollars, like no dollars. In fact, he's asked for money 2 times in the New Testament. Both times he says, I don't have any money. He didn't have a lot to his name. He never had a house, never had a spot that was his own. He lived place to place. Like Jesus wasn't known for his wealth or his health. If you pay attention to like the rest of the Bible, kind of towards the end there, things get real bad with his health, in fact. And even just like the version of this thing that we believe, I think really kind of falls apart quickly. But if we're honest with ourselves, there are times still that I think we think we're closer to the kingdom of heaven when we get that pay raise, when we get that promotion, when we get that new position, when we get those possessions, whatever it might be. We start to think that must mean we're closer to the kingdom of heaven. Like things are going our way, so therefore like the kingdom of heaven's on our side. This is how it works. And as we get better at those things, the kingdom of heaven kind of follows us that way. Let me just say, whenever we start to think that way, what we're assuming is that our actions are what get us into the kingdom of heaven. That our actions are what do it. And when we start to believe that, then we have no need for a savior anymore because we think we can save ourselves. Jesus is the king of this kingdom, and he's there as a savior because, let's face it, my actions, your actions are never going to be enough. The kingdom of heaven is not this place that is paved in gold streets. Actually, the kingdom of heaven is a really broken field. It shows up in our most broken moments, our most vulnerable moments, our moments where we are hurt the most. That's where the kingdom of heaven comes in. Remember what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit, because why? Theirs is the kingdom. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The poor in spirit is where the kingdom shows up. It's not those that are great, those that have it all together, those that are in places of power. It's those who are poor in spirit. See, this I don't know about that. I don't know about you, but this gives me hope here. This gives me hope. The kingdom of heaven is closer than I think it is sometimes, especially when I think that it's furthest from me. That's when it's closest to me. And he says, it's found in this field. A man found it. Now notice this really quickly. He hid it again, right? He doesn't take it with him. I think that's very, very interesting. I don't know what Jesus is trying to get at with this, by the way, but he does say that he puts it back where he found it. My belief is when you find the kingdom of heaven, your job is not to run away with it and take it somewhere else. Your job is to put it back where you found it. Your kingdom of heaven is not just for you to grab and run away with. Your kingdom of heaven is for you to bring back to the community around you, to the people who are around you. That is where it is for. It is not just for some like global movement or some big thing. It is for the place that you've been planted in, the place that you are at every single day, your workplace, your home, your whatever it might be, your place that you hang out. That's where the kingdom of heaven needs to show up. He puts it back down and he hides it. And then with joy, he went out and sold all he had and bought that field. He wants to get that treasure. He wants to buy that field, but it's going to cost him everything. Remember what we just talked about, that the first thing is that this kingdom is for everyone, but this kingdom also costs everything. And that might sound really harsh to some of us. That might sound like really, really over the top. My kids have experienced this recently, where they have started taking allowance for the first time. They do their chores, and we have a little chore chart that they get little hole punches for everything they do. And they're very proud of themselves because they've like completed it like once. I don't know. It's not going great, to be honest with you. And we have two different kinds of kids, right? You have the kid who's the saver, who they hold on to every penny they get. They don't want to spend any of it. And then you have the other kid who's the spender. And someday, you know who you are, by the way, the saver or the spender. There's two types of people in the world, and they eventually marry each other. That's the way it works, right? It's eventually one of you is the saver, one of you is the spender, you're married, and then you have to fight it out for the rest of your lives. But that's what happens. And it's good. I mean, it's good to have a blend, right? But that's what we have in our house. Those two, they cannot figure it out. And every time they want to blow through everything they've saved up. There's times where I have to have this conversation with them. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Do you want to spend everything that you've got? Do you want to take all the money that you've brought in, and do you want to spend all of it that quickly? And because of Amazon, they do, on a daily basis. They're absolutely I do. Yeah, what else is on Amazon? It can get here in 2 days. And they're just so excited. And we, no joke, this is just a complete side note. We went to a mall the other day, and my daughter walked in. She was like, what is this? She was like, I love this place. There's all the stores. They're all here. They're just in one place. And we're like, we forgot you've never seen that before. Maybe nor will you again. I don't know. But yeah, it's just, anyways, there's this idea of do we want to spend everything we have now? Some people would say this is extreme. Some people would say this is over the top. In fact, if you've ever read Good Faith by David Kinnaman, who runs the Barna Group, and Gabe Lyons, they wrote a book called Good Faith a couple years ago. Great book, fantastic book. Very depressing if you're a Christian. But it's all about basically where we're at in Christianity, in the world, what's going on. And the truth is right now, most people are nuns, if you're familiar with this term. Not like they've become, they have habits and they're what you see in the movie Sister Act. Not that kind of thing. They're nuns, they have no religious affiliation. They would say, I have no religious affiliation whatsoever. If they were to check a box they would check none. I have no religious affiliation. That is the largest growing segment in the world right now of people. They're saying, I have no religious affiliation whatsoever. That's growing like crazy. Meanwhile, when you ask people what they think about Christianity, one of the biggest things that comes to mind is there's two words. One is irrelevant, and the other is extreme. And people who, right now in our world, see Christianity as an extremist thing. In fact, if you ask them, would it be extremist to ask you to give 10% of your money to a church or an organization, do a tithe, as we would call it in the church? They would say, absolutely, that's extremist. That's an extreme move. You're extreme. You are now an extremist group. Christianity is an extremist group. Would it be crazy to ask somebody to go on a trip, like take their own vacation time, pay money to go on a mission trip and go somewhere? Would that be extremist? They're like, absolutely, that's extremist. That's extremist behavior. You ask people to give up their money, give up their time, and go somewhere to help other people. There's a belief that Christianity is becoming an extremist group to the world around us. Now, I think that's fascinating because I do think that one of the problems we have is that while Jesus would say this is a countercultural kingdom, it is countercultural, it is not anti-cultural. There's a big difference between the two. I believe that the kingdom of heaven is countercultural. It acts different. It is selfless and sacrificing in a culture that is not right now. It's a thing that is absolutely a sacrificing movement. It is a loving movement in a world that I see is full of hate right now. It's a movement that is full of hope in a world that I see that is full of fear right now. I believe Christianity is a countercultural movement. I want to be clear, though, it is not an anti-cultural movement. There's a big difference between the two. Anti-cultural means that we are against the culture we're in. We are not against, we are just different from. Does that make sense? I want to be very clear about that. Especially as we walk through months like this, I'm just going to put it out there. As we walk through like a Pride Month, things like that. Oh no, are we allowed to talk about that in church? As we walk through things like that, we are not here to be anti. We're just here to be countercultural. It's different. It's a different way of living. It's not against other people's ways of living. That's what we see when we look at the other parables Jesus talked about. It's just countercultural. And for us, I think we have to find what that looks like because we live in a culture that thinks we're extremist, and maybe we are. Maybe to some extent we are, but I think sometimes we push people away because we become so anti-cultural instead of countercultural. Because what Jesus is asking here, what he's saying is happening on this story is absolutely countercultural. This man finds a treasure and he sells off everything he has to be a part of it. To have this kingdom, to gain this kingdom, he sells off everything he has. He gives up everything of his own to gain this thing that's greater. Now, to do that, you have to believe that the investment is worth it, right? If you're going to sell off everything you have, you better believe that what you gain is greater than what you gave up. I was thinking about this the other day. Marie and I were talking about our engagement story. Somebody asked us about our engagement story. And I remember when we got engaged, we were both in college. Marie was graduating. I'm like way younger, like Marie's like a lot older than me, like a lot. And so she was graduating from college, and I was like a spring chicken. And so we were both getting ready. She was getting ready to graduate, and I was still in my, like third year of college. And so I'm way younger. I just want you to remember that as you look at us, and I look like easily 20 years older than my wife. Anyways, I've had a tough go, guys. So we were about to get engaged, and Marie had no idea it was coming. In fact, the night before I proposed to her, this is not a joke, we were sitting on her couch together because we were both about to go on Christmas break. And we were both about to leave to go to separate places for Christmas break. She was going to go spend time with her family in Virginia. I was going to fly to go see my family in Oklahoma. And we were going to separate at that time and go different ways. And we're sitting on her couch the night before, and she's bawling. And she was like, I said, what's wrong? What's going on? Which I should have known because I'm a guy. And she said, I just thought we'd be engaged by now. I'm going to go see my mom. I'm going to get to spend 2 weeks with her. I want to be dress shopping. I want to be planning a wedding, but I don't want to do that until I'm engaged, until I have a ring on my finger. And I told her, I said, Marie, it's sooner than you think. And she said, I have heard you say that before, and I don't believe you anymore. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, it's sooner than you think. And so I had bought this ring. I had literally had to go to my savings account, and I had to empty the whole thing out. And I had already bought this ring. I had everything prepared. Everything was already in its place. It was already there. And I had this whole plan. And the next morning when Marie woke up, she came to her kitchen, and her roommate woke up at the same time, which was not like her roommate. Her roommate was a sleeper, would sleep late. And she was like, hey, Marie, I wanted to give you one last gift for Christmas before you leave. And Marie was like, oh, that's weird. And she said, well, I just want to give you this. And she handed her a scroll, and it was a scroll with a ring, like this little plasticky ring around it. Not the good ring, just like a ring you got at Claire's. She handed it to Marie, and Marie instantly started crying, knew what was going on, and her roommate looked at her and said, you're not going to wear that, are you? And she had to go change because she was going to get proposed to that day. And for the rest of the day, every stop she would make, I had this is, it's pretty good. I had 9 different stops across the state of Florida. So she had to go the entire state of Florida, from where we were in Lake Wales, Florida, right in the middle of the state. She had to go to visit my house, to then see another one of my roommates, then go to our college campus. And at every stop, she would have a scroll, and that scroll would have a different ring. And the ring would be a little plastic ring that she would have to put on a different finger. It would tell her which finger to put it on, which of course was 9 rings, leaving the 10th one for the real one, right, the good one. And so she's traveling across the state. She had to go to our church. She then saw some of the students that we were pastoring at that time. She went to their high school over lunchtime, and it was their lunch, and they came out to meet her, gave her the next scroll, which sent her to an airport in West Palm Beach, Florida. We weren't flying anywhere. I wasn't that rich. We just, I had some friends who were picking up their son at the airport. I thought that'll really throw her off. So she went to baggage claim at the airport, saw some other friends. They gave her another scroll. Then she had to go to meet one of my friends from high school who put her on a horse-drawn carriage from there to another spot where another guy met her, another friend of mine. He put her in his car. And then when she got to the inn, she shows up at the Bethesda by the Sea, this beautiful chapel that was built on the water in Palm Beach. It's like in the 1800s, gorgeous building. And she came there, and she was in the garden, and I remember she came around the corner. I was hiding. I had set the ring out with the scroll in it, the real ring, and she came and she grabbed that ring, and before I even had a chance, because I was hiding, before I even had a chance, she had already put that ring on, and I had to be like, hey, I think I'm supposed to do that. Can I have it back? And so I took the ring back, and then I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, and then I put it back on her. She was like, sorry, I've been putting on rings all day. Now, let me just say, there's a couple things to this story. First of all, is that for me, it was a no-brainer in giving up every dollar I had to buy that ring. Why? Because I knew that the relationship I was gaining, I knew that what I was gaining was worth every penny. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. That it's worth everything you have. And you would give up everything you have for that one thing. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And hopefully, for most of us, we're not out here chasing the fake rings, the fake treasures, because my fear is some of us have given up everything we've had for those plastic rings, for the cheap ones. And we have given up everything we have to follow certain politicians, to follow certain pundits or certain political parties. Some of us have given everything we have so that we could find the popularity we want. We want the posts to get viral or the whatever it is. We've given up everything we have to try to do that. And you start to see this more and more in our culture, right? Where the popularity becomes a huge thing. And you're like, if I'm not getting the likes I want now, I'll give up a little bit more to try to get there. And so maybe I just need to take off a little bit more clothing or whatever to try to get those likes. And we're giving up all these things. Maybe it's you're giving up everything you have for a relationship that will not last, to just get somebody to like you for a short time. Maybe you're giving up everything you have for these small, simple things, and you've been chasing the wrong type of ring. But when you know what it is, when you understand what this kingdom of heaven is, you are not afraid to give up everything you have, because you know without a shadow of a doubt that it is worth it. And for some of us, we have things we have to give up. We have some things we need to give up to gain this kingdom. Some of us, we might have some unforgiveness that we've been holding on to, some bitterness that we almost enjoy having, some anger maybe that we thrive on. Some of us might have some literal hatred towards certain types of people or people that we work with, are in relationship with, and families with. Some of us might have to give that up. We might have to give up pride that we have, that really believes that somehow we are better than other people and we deserve better than other people. Some of us might have to give up, maybe it is possessions that we've been chasing so hard over and over again, and we may have to give those up. Some of us, it might be our lives, the things we look at, the things we watch, the things we take in. We might have to give some of those up because giving them up is worth it for this kingdom of heaven. When you found this treasure, you will go all in. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves, is where are we in this story? Are you in that spot where you're like, no, I'm all in? I'm all in. Are you in the spot where you're saying, no, I'm completely against this? And let me just tell you, Jesus would rather you be one of those two things, even if it's against, than he would have you stay in the third boat. The third option of saying, I'm on the fence, there's no room for that in the kingdom of heaven. It's all in, completely against, but there's no room for staying on the fence. And today, some of us might be trying to ride that fence as hard as we can. And I would ask you, if first of all you don't know Jesus as the king of your kingdom, I would encourage you to do so. To pray as we close today, that you would just surrender everything you have to him. For some of us, we might know Jesus, and we might have been following Jesus for a long time. We still haven't given up certain things. We still haven't surrendered everything to him. Everything. We may have to do that. For some of us, we might have to evaluate in our hearts, what are the things we're holding back? What are the things we're trying to hold on to? And ask him to help us surrender those to him. If you would, let's stand together as we pray, as we close this morning. Jesus, I thank you for this simple story, this one sentence. And I thank you for the example that you set. I thank you for this kingdom that is for every single one of us, but also a kingdom that will cost us every single thing we have. I thank you for inviting us into that kingdom, letting us be a part of that kingdom, saying it's for every one of us in this room, that each one of us have the potential, the possibility to find the kingdom right where we are right now. I thank you so much for that. But I also thank you for the example that you set for us in showing what it looks like to give up everything for this relationship. Jesus, we remember that you did this first, that you gave up everything for us, that you gave up everything for us, and now we have the chance in return to give up everything for relationship with you, for this kingdom that you've presented to us. I thank you so much for your example. Thank you so much for your love, for your grace for us. And today we pray that we would just surrender to you. Praise things in your name. Amen. And let's sing this hymn together as we close this morning.
it.
2 times in a row.
I don't know. I just saw that you were saying it, and I'm like, Ken? I don't know. We need Tony. Because I just took over slides so he could figure it out. I don't know what he did. I don't know why it keeps going off. But stuff. I tell you though, this weird things happen. Because like last week, we went through all practice, fine, whatever, and then we go to play. Kevin was his guitar was like double as loud in my ear. All of a sudden, like I don't know if someone bumped the button or he was just playing harder. Like sometimes it just does weird things. But the last church that I played at, we had Dad, Carol.